All right, these are absolutely my favorite types of interviews. Now, I typically say that for franchisees, period. But I also work with my wife, and so I like that story too, because that's an interesting dynamic on how it works out. So thanks, guys, for joining me. Whoever wants to go first, I like to kick off with the one scripted question, which is, what is your accidental franchise story? Whoever wants to go first, go. And then we'll kick into more of a discussion.
Sure, yeah, I can go first. Yeah. So Vishal and I moved to the area in 2002 for our first jobs in quality and corporate management. And very early on, we fell in love with the area. We wanted to raise our kids here with, taking advantage of the great school districts and the great universities around the Research Triangle Park. So, as we were thriving in our careers in corporate management, and we were relying heavily at the time on our preschools to be able to balance work and life, we saw firsthand the impact that our preschool had on our kids who were 2 and 5 at the time. Okay. And, through some personal anecdotes, which I'm happy to share with you, it kind of led us to, at some point in our career, wanting to give back to the area that we had benefited so much from, not only with our first jobs in our first home, but also raising our 2 beautiful children. And so through that process, we wanted to be able to give back in the same way that we had received through the preschools in the area and early learning, and then also found a niche offering with the Children's Lighthouse. So that's kind of how it was a perfect marriage of the two.
Yeah. And if I may add, I think anyone getting into business has to be a bit naive, right? You don't know what you're getting into. So when we started our journey, I think we were at a point in our careers where the kids growing up, and we needed some more flexibility between the two of us. Both of us traveled quite a bit for work. So we needed flexibility in schedule. And then also we were looking for, I think with a small business, you always have this vision of being your own boss, right? To a certain extent. So that's what got us interested in small business. And then like Sheetal said, the childcare as an industry was something that made sense to us. We could identify with. We felt there was a sense of purpose there. And then we knew that we needed support. We didn't have a background in childcare, so that's where the franchise companies came into play. And we spoke with a number of different franchise companies. And then finally, Children's Lighthouse just felt right. In speaking with the people, the connection we built with the ownership and the management over there. It was, one of those things you can't always explain why, but it just felt right. And we first signed in 2013, after which we opened our first school in 2017. So it's been a bit of a journey, but I'll stop there for any questions you may have. Yeah.
Now I have a million follow-up questions. That great opening statement. So, Sheetal, maybe I'll start with you. You're in a career. You're making a pivot. What's going on emotionally in your brain for the concept that you collect a paycheck when you work for someone else, and now for your family, you're going to be in charge of that outcome? Like, tell me what you were navigating from a emotional standpoint internally as you're going through this journey.
Absolutely. I think that, as we backtrack to the days when the kids were little and, we were constantly tagging each other with, just jet setting all the time to report into corporate. Because, I was traveling frequently to Chicago, but then all around the world to manage suppliers for our, for the different quality businesses that I worked across, like products and service industries. I think that we got to a point, like I said, where I definitely felt like, the intangibles, right? Of, we feel accomplished, right? We have done really well for ourselves, but as you go through Maslow's like need hierarchy, right, that strong case for like a sense of purpose and fulfillment and doing something bigger than just themselves, right, came into play. And we both love kids, right? We have enjoyed the parenting process. We have really enjoyed raising our own children, and so it was a way to really keep that inner child, right, alive, and at the same time do better for others as well by doing good, and extending kind of what we thought was an amazing program to our school families, but then also to the greater community through our other fellow franchisees. So it just felt like the stars aligned for us. As I didn't necessarily have a strong case to give up my flourishing career, and neither did Vishal. And I think that's where Children's Lighthouse, the case where it's an executive model of ownership, felt right for us. The people at home office, are just such a pleasure to work with, and they're very easy to reach. We've always felt, that strong access to our business coaches, to the operations, and now to bolstering like the marketing side of it, and the brand recognition in the area. We definitely felt like we've built year on year to get to where we are, in our markets in Raleigh and Cary.
How did you shift your identity too? Because when there's a different identity of having an employer versus now you are in charge. And you just said, like, it wasn't like you had a good career. It wasn't like there was a trigger that's making you say, I need to quit my career, other than flexibility, maybe not having to travel as much, like trying to find something that localizes it a little bit more, and that still allows you to have success. But how are you dealing with that identity shift?
Yeah, so I'll give you like these personal anecdotes, right? With a 17-year-old who was recently recruited into a D1 college soccer program to play in Boston starting next year. She started her love for athletics and sports early in the preschool years. And I remember clear to this day where her preschool teacher had urged us to enroll her in soccer lessons because she just was leaving all the kids behind in the dust, So that's kind of where we felt like there was a strong case. And then even with our son, right? He is uber social, he's just a great communicator at the age of 14. And his love for reading started early in the preschool years. So I think, as far as being able to make that shift from having that, consistent salary, right, and a dependable income, to kind of jumping in the deep end and, starting over, obviously was, a little bit scary. But I think, that's where I leaned quite a bit on Vishal, because he actually took a sabbatical from work for a year for us to, get the operations off the ground.
Yeah, and if I may add, Nick, going from working for somebody to kind of running your own business, I don't think anyone can prepare you for that. I think especially if you're a first generation, first time business owner, and I think it's you're learning on the job constantly. And I think the first few days and the first few weeks, once we open the doors, that's when reality hits you, right? And then you got weak moments like, why did I do this? Why did we do this? And then you realize how lonely it is to be at the top of an organization, right? Because ultimately the buck stops at you, and you've got to make decisions, and hard decisions sometimes, and you've got to worry about the greater good, right? It's no one individual or it's no one child, but the greater good of the school family, and that's a huge responsibility. And Sheetal's really take that on. And to be honest, I mean, there've been the first few weeks. I mean, I think there were lots of tears and lots of sweat and tears that were shed. But I think as you do it, you gain confidence over the months and the years, and then you get to a point where you gain that confidence and you feel like you've got this. But there's always a new challenge, right? There's always a new challenge every year, just like we saw with COVID and other things that you've got to learn to navigate. And I think just being agile and I think all of your basic traits, right? Like the emotional intelligence, the hard work ethic, all of those come in handy is what I would say.
Vishal, you said in your opening statement, you said we looked at other businesses. Ultimately, like we felt most comfortable with Children's Lighthouse. What connects with me on that, whenever I've talked with franchisees, and I'm so much oversimplifying it, but it comes down to two reasons why someone says yes. It seems it's either the culture, it's culture, and it's the business model. Like obviously, like when you're going to invest as much as you're going to invest, the business model has to be sound, because you are doing it to have impact to the community, but you're also doing it to have financial impact to your family. And then the culture side, like I've talked with franchisees where they get to a discovery day or they're meeting the team and something feels like it's too much run like a P&L, almost like it's run like the corporate environment that they're trying to run away from. Right. And so they say, no, I'm not going to move forward. So for you looked at these other businesses. Were you looking, am I oversimplifying that to say you're looking at business model and culture? And then what ultimately pushed you over the edge?
Yeah, so we looked at some, and many of the other franchise companies we explored were larger in size and we had a bigger network. So we were looking at, the business model. I think one thing that we were quite confident about it was the industry and the inherent demand for early childhood education, right? So for parents to pursue their careers, I mean, having a safe place for the child where they can thrive is really important. And I think there was a demographic kind of a trend that we had confidence in. But beyond that, I think when we spoke with different franchise companies, I think that the people that we had access to, the time that they made for us, had varied. And I think that's where Children's Lighthouse stood out. The time that they made to answer our questions, didn't kind of rush us through the process. And we had access to like the owner of the company right from the early days. The head of business development was also very, very welcoming and very open. And then we had an opportunity to actually speak with existing franchisees, and I think that tells a lot, right? Because the experience that people have had working with within a particular franchise system. And the more I also have the opportunity to go and visit with a couple of school owners and actually look at their facilities in person. So that's what really helped build the confidence, and finally made us decide to go with Children's Lighthouse, and we did that at a time when the Children's Lighthouse did not have much of a presence. There wasn't a single school in this area, so we pretty much set up. We were like the second school to start when we opened, but when we signed, there weren't any schools in the area. So there was that, we had to take that additional ownership around building the brand in the local community.
And if I can also add to that, because back when we were looking, like Vishal said, it was about 15 years ago, right? And even at the time, our own child was 4. We were looking for a program in the area that we could not find because we toured multiple schools at the time. Trying to find a program because he missed the cutoff, and the cutoff in North Carolina is August 31st. You have to be 5 years old to enter elementary school. Okay, and he has an October birthday, so we could not find a single program in the area. We looked at big box chains, we looked at mom and pop, childcare centers. Not one offered a program that catered to children that missed the cutoff who are 5 years old as they are in preschool. Okay, and back then, Children's Lighthouse had an answer to that because they had a program with an advanced pre-K curriculum. So if you've already been through pre-K as a 4-year-old, you don't have to repeat the same teacher in the same classroom. And, that's where we knew early on that, this program stood out. And that we impacted firsthand from it. It was a best in industry, program at the time. And I feel like year on year, they have kept that, leadership and that niche in curriculum and the way it stands out in the industry. So, it's been really rewarding from that standpoint.
what was going on through your guys' minds and discussions at home? You sign, and you said 2013 you signed, 2017 you open. And so there's a timeline here where obviously you got to go find the real estate, develop the real estate, build infrastructure, and get it open. And because this is not a man in a van type business, this is a real production business. How were the conversations at home? What were the emotions that you guys are navigating in between signing and opening?
Right. Yeah, I can kick it off, but a lot of heartburn and frustration, right? So I think you can almost it was almost like two different projects. Developing and building the school and then operating the school. It has its own set of challenges. So I think what we didn't fully appreciate getting into it was the challenges of finding a site, finding a location, navigating all of the local governmental municipality rules, getting the permits and what have you. So through those 4 years, I think when we first signed, I think we thought it would take us a year or two, which ended up being 4. And we went through the process of finding a number of different sites that fell through for one reason or the other, right? In one case, there was a piece of land, and we had started doing some due diligence, and then seller decided not to sell it anymore. In other cases, you explore a piece of land, and then you find like there are rocks underground, and excavating that would just be cost prohibitive, right? So there's all these unknowns. So it's definitely a huge learning opportunity, and it requires financial commitment as well to kind of stay through that process. So lots of ups and downs. I think even a couple of years into it, I think there were points in time when we wondered if this is ever going to happen, whether this is going to become a reality, because you get up, you get knocked down 2 or 3 times, and then you start kind of losing confidence. But I think we kind of stuck with it, and I think we were very, very fortunate with the location we ended up with.
And I think also, you talk about a true partnership, right? Because, Vishal tends to be like very left brain. He has a keen eye for numbers. And then with my background in quality, where, I'm certainly more creative, lean on my right brain a lot. And those are the people that I really work with on a daily basis, right? Our teachers are just so creative and, just so good at what they do, right? That, I think through that process of just, being able to provide the best program, but then being able to optimize the cost and the quality and such, I think is, how we came up with this beautiful product.
I mean, it's fascinating. Like this is the entire category. It takes time to get these things open, and it's almost like the bigger the investment potential on both what it's going to cost to get in and how much you could potentially make, the more complexities that go alongside it, which is any type of business. You're obviously getting to shortcut some of the things with all the operations, the curriculum, the modeling, the architecture. Like you have all these things that shortcut, but to keep your mind focused on what is winning and why you got into this in the first place. And Vishal, you said like, we were wondering at times whether this was going to happen or not, but you knew that it was, and you had to keep like focus on that North Star to keep pushing through. And I love this category of investment, but you can see like, and I'm sure you guys, as you look back on your careers and everything that led up to this moment, you have to build a level of sophistication to weather that storm and get through it so that you can get a store or a school open.
Right. Absolutely.
So now give me a sense of happiness. Where are you guys at now? Like do you take the moment to pinch yourself and see how far you've come?
Oh yeah. I mean, every single day, right? It's, I have the best job in the world, and, it's super rewarding as we walk into school and we get these unconditional hugs, right? And, they come to us as infants, right? 6 weeks old, and they grow to be these smart, thriving, well-rounded, pre-K children that we graduate, because we're coming up on graduation now. And then we get to see them on stage, and they share with us and their grandparents and families what they want to be when they grow up. And it's just amazing how, right, you have the scientists and the musicians and the artists, and it just makes everything worthwhile, right? Just, a pure joy to behold.
Yeah, and the I think we getting into the business thing, Nick, you mentioned about the business opportunity, but I think for someone getting into a business like this, I think you've got to love what you do, right? Beyond the money itself, beyond the economic kind of potential for a business, because you could make money in many different ways, right? But I think that's what the fact that we are in a business that gives us joy. I mean, the product we're putting out and the impact that we make in the community, I think that's what gives us the most satisfaction. And then it's about I think it's also given us the opportunity to do well by doing good. So we are at a point now where we've got 2 schools. We built our first one, which took a long time, and we acquired a second school. So we've got 2 schools in the area, and we're just working on continually kind of operating and fine tuning and improving the offering that we have right now. And then who knows what the future will bring, right? So we feel like we're in a good spot right now where we've got a balance between enjoying our personal lives as well as running a good business.
And for clarity, Vishal, you maintained your corporate career, and Sheetal, you've gone on to operate the units. That's correct?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct.
How's that been navigating that, Vishal? Like to know like you're entrepreneurial in the portfolio, but you're still going into work. Is that just something that was meaningful to you on the human side and what you wanted to accomplish in your life?
Yeah, I didn't think I would stay in the corporate world this long, but the work I do right now is just very fulfilling. So my job, I work in this space where the work we do is around organizational culture, and I really enjoy that. So that's what's kept me working in my job. So initially, like Sheetal said, I took a sabbatical to help set up the business, but then since then, what we also realize is it's better to have a clear line, what do you say, a line of control. Have one boss that you can go to rather than have 2 bosses in the picture, right? So those are some of the learnings that we had. So me being there wasn't necessarily productive if I didn't need to be there. And I think as we've kind of learned the business, I think Sheetal manages the operations, and I'm more like a non-exec director, right? I can help from the background and weekends and things like that. So yeah, I think we've had to organize our lives to make that happen. But it does feel a little. I can look at the corporate world and how it operates, and then small business, and it's funny to see some of the distinctions sometimes, right? And some of the differences in just the culture and the attitude and what the challenges that we face. So it is, it's always fascinating.
I mean, kudos to your company, and this is why I say that. I wrote a column, and I still think about it all the time. I think about my own journey of becoming a business owner. And so the title of this column was "Catch the Entrepreneur Before They Catch You." And the whole point is that typically when companies sense that there's an entrepreneur, they push the entrepreneur away. Like they don't want new ideas. They want you to fall in line, and they want you to report just like the way that we've been trained and raised as humans. But when a company can see that someone is entrepreneurial and capture that, it's a different type of contribution that they contribute. And so in your guys' sense, you guys are entrepreneurs. You've opened up 2 businesses. That's a very rare accomplishment of what you guys have accomplished. And your job, Vishal, it says we're good. Like we still want your brain power. There's tremendous value, and whether they recognize it or not, the things that you think about when you're not at work probably impact the way for organizational change that can happen at your job as well.
Well said. Yeah, absolutely. I think I've been very fortunate. I think that my employer has been very progressive in the thinking. And to your point, I think my experiences, through our entrepreneurial exploits, there's always things you learn and you bring back, right? So there's opportunities for cross-pollination, although the size of the companies may vary. But I've been very fortunate to be in that position. Yeah,
that's awesome. So I talked with a franchisee last week. Great conversation. And I said, what's the advice? And he said, just do it. And I bring that up because the question is from both of you. There's someone watching this who's sitting on the sidelines. What would you advise them to do? And that's interesting. I talked with Michael Brown earlier today, and I said, look, at this level of investment, if the mindset is, oh no, tariffs, oh no, politics, oh no, whatever, then the mindset's not ready for it, because once you've built up some success in your financial portfolio and the wealth for your family, you're playing for the future. And what you just said, like in your future, you bought in 2013, 4 years later, a lot changed from 13 to 17. And so the mindset can't be in the moment. The mindset has to be for the future. So his advice was just do it. There's someone watching this. What advice do the two of you have for someone that's considering franchising, period?
I think that, from our experience, I know our success is based on the foundation of education, because we're engineers by training. Yeah. We got a master's in quality and tech management. And, I think that so long as you have a passion for what you are pursuing in a business, I know you will do everything in your power to make it successful, right? So I think, like I said, it was like the perfect marriage of our backgrounds that came together with kind of the culture, from a top-down approach at Children's Lighthouse that we align so well with. Because it's not just about, making a quick buck. It's about making a difference, right? Having an impact, and really being able to sustain this into future generations.
Yeah. And, I just to build on that, and I think what Michael says, it makes a lot of sense. But I mean, you could say that, okay, he obviously is a franchise company, but I think with a first-time entrepreneur, there's so much of tentativeness and hesitation, right? And we experienced that ourselves, right? And looking back, you always feel like, oh, I should have done this sooner, right? Because it's a matter of jumping into the deep end and learning to swim. That's very much, because like you said, the economy will change, interest rates will vary, there'll be other things that happen. But being an entrepreneur is about how you navigate any challenge that comes your way, right? And I think once you build your core kind of skill set, that's essentially your job. So I think the challenges of today won't define the success of your business, but I think learning to navigate those is what's going to help define the future of your business.
Yeah, I love that advice. I mean, I'll say, like, I think through your guys' story, for making the leap into this and navigating 4 years and getting your first unit open, like when you look back at like some of the pressures or the stresses that you go through, then when COVID hits, doesn't mean COVID was easy, but you had some recognition of different level, like what did stress feel like and how did you get through it? And how did the two of you lean on each other to navigate it? And sometimes like the timing of saying yes, you look back on a career, like I think the same way. Sometimes I'm like, boy, why didn't I do it earlier? But then I look and say, well, there's a blessing because all of those ingredients that I built up so that I could make the decision to do this then start making sense. Some people look at it and say, but I'm quitting a career that I invested education in and time and moved up the corporate ladder. It's like, you're not throwing that away. You're building upon it. It might be a pivot, but you're still building upon it. And I think your guys' story is beautiful on how you guys have done this. And it's awesome, multi-unit operators and working together. I'm grateful that you guys both shared some of your story with me today.
Absolutely. No, thank you.
Pleasure.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Nick.
Yeah, it was great. For Sheetal and Vishal, I'm Nick. This was another episode of Meet the Franchisee. Take care.